Thank you for joining us today. June is PTSD Awareness Month, and Canada Beyond the Blue certainly wants to recognize how hard it can be for someone to recognize that there's something happening with them. But then we often get, well, what do I do next? How do I get help? What does help even look like? And we really wanted to demystify the process, which I find people can be very hesitant around. And that in itself is very anxiety building. So today we have a phenomenal group of people who are kind enough to share their stories, their time, and their strategies with us. So I'm going to go around with and let you guys introduce yourselves. So I'll just get started. My name is Del. And I'm the former president of Toronto Beyond the Blue and now the president of Canada Beyond the Blue. We're a not-for-profit organization that supports the families of officers across this nation, and really proud to be at the helm of this organization. We've got 7 chapters across Canada and growing. And in my journey, I've been able to meet phenomenal people, all of which you see on your screen today. So if we can get started with some introductions. Dorann and Chris, can you get started, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris. It's my wife, Dorann. I'm a serving officer with Toronto Police. I've been with Toronto Police 12 years now. Before that, I was a cop back in England. So all in all, I've got 22, 23 years of policing behind me. I was diagnosed with PTSD in the end of 2018, and I've been on my journey back ever since. I had about a year off work, and then I went back to work at 55 Division, and I'm still there working in the CISU at the moment.
Dorann, you guys came over from England how many years ago?
15 or 16 years ago.
15 years ago. And you're currently working here. And, it's been a journey for you alongside Chris. Chris was an officer back home as well. And so this is nothing new for you, but certainly being here in a different capacity, and so certainly the reason for having Dorann and Chris on is that I want to emphasize that the journey doesn't happen alone, that it's not just Chris's healing or the impact happens to Chris, that Dorann is very much side by side. And so it's important to have you here, Dorann, though you don't have that introduction at heart, is because you have a lot to share and a lot to say, being that support person in Chris's life. Yeah. Pete, why don't you go next?
I will. Thank you. Thank you for having me down. Great to be on this panel with some fantastic people. Pete Grande. I'm the current director of member benefits with the Toronto Police Association. I have been for, believe it or not, it'll be 3 years this coming September. I'm a 27-year veteran with the Toronto Police Service. Just like all of our officers, when you get to this stage in your career, most of my time was in uniform. Did a lot of major crime work. Started as a civilian. Diagnosed with PTSD 5 years ago now. 5 years ago. It's something that I live with every single day, every day. Although it may seem that I function, like many of us, what you don't see behind that curtain, you don't know about. There's a lot of stuff going on behind that curtain. Been married for 31 years to probably one of the most remarkable women ever. I got 3 beautiful children who, unfortunately, because of my injury, have bared the brunt of my anger, have bared the brunt of my silenceness. I don't even know if that's a word. Of my silence. Have bared the brunt of my moodiness. I often say, and I've said it a million times, being at work at the station, I was fun Bobby, always smiling, always laughing, always joking, until I put that key in the door at home. As soon as I put that key in the door, something switched and I became Mr. Hyde. I was no longer fun. I was no longer fun to be around. In fact, I was very hurtful. That once I realized and I stopped and I listened that it's time to get help, I won't say that things turned around immediately, but things got better because I started to understand. And believe it or not, for me, this isn't the case with everyone, but when that diagnosis, when my psychologist, who I still see, said, yeah, well, of course you got PTSD. It's like, wow, it's just like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. Like, okay, now this makes sense. I'm not just this mean guy. This makes sense. I am injured. So
thanks for that.
Maybe take a little more time than, you know.
No, I think it's honest, right? And I think we're so lucky. I know Toronto's so lucky to have you on their association, simply because that lived experience helps you to run your mandate that much. I think
it'd be very hypocritical, Del, if I wasn't honest.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm telling members, you have to, you don't have to, you should face, and yeah, it'd be very hypocritical if I didn't share my story.
No, that's great. Thank you, Pete. Dr. Leah Hartman.
Hi, I'm Leah, and I'm a psychologist in Toronto. I work at 2 private practices, a Center for Trauma Recovery and Growth, as well as allied psychological services. So I work with a variety of individuals, but my main focus and training and area of interest is working with law enforcement, so police, special constables, correctional officers, military, 911 dispatchers, paramedics, and firefighters, especially individuals who have faced a workplace injury or personal trauma as well, and assessing, diagnosing, and providing, treatment and returning people back to work, and improving functioning and resiliency and growth.
Yeah, and that's the great part, is the growth. So often we don't really even mention it as a possibility. Post-traumatic growth. That's great. And Dr. Daniel / Padre, I'm going to let you do your own introduction and decide.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Del, for hosting and for the invitation, and wonderful good evening to each and every one of you. My name is Daniel Saugh. I've had the privilege, and I say the word and use the word privilege, to be serving in the military for 10 years plus as a chaplain. And I specialized in mental health later on, and then about 10 years now coming up with the Toronto Police as a chaplain. My background is in psychotherapy, so I specialize in trauma, so traumatology. That was my research and my doctoral work. And my research was actually on police and military, how they cope, and how they cope with trauma, and what happens beyond the trauma, so beyond PTSD. So I focused on not only just PTSD, but also beyond that PTSD. So that would include, as Del mentioned, post-traumatic growth, but also there's another type of injury, a psychological based injury called moral injury. And that's what my research actually identified. And so I got a background in health promotion and public health as well. And all of those tools put together in the kit really informs me to really help individuals to take charge of their lives, to improve, to embrace their new normal, to reintegrate in a healthy, functioning way. And I'm just so passionate about helping our men and women in uniform. So it's just an honor, and thank you for the privilege to be a part of this, shall we say, distinguished platform.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. I asked, and there was no hesitancy, and it speaks volumes to who you are. Ask people in terms of giving back and paying this forward. So thank you all for being here. So, the goal is to walk someone through from start to somewhat finish what they can expect. And I think it's really important, because the more we can demystify the process, I think the less anxiety someone will feel, because now they know what the journey might look like. So, I always say, notice, listen, connect. It was taught to me, and it was like, okay, I get this. This is something I can do. And so when someone wants to get help, or someone else notices, wait a minute, there's something wrong with my colleague here, You know, how do we go about doing that? And I think the reason why most people hesitate is that connection part. Well, I don't know what to say. I'm not trained in this. What do I do? What if they say this? What if they say that? And, so I'm going to talk very briefly about that and then start segueing to the next steps. So the first thing is noticing. It's so important to notice the change in behavior. You used to laugh a lot. You used to crack a lot of jokes. You can notice silence. Sometimes silence can be so deafening. That can speak volumes in itself. And so noticing is going to be big, because when you approach the person, it's non-threatening, right? You're going to point at the behavior. Hey, I noticed you used to come out a lot. Now we barely see you. Is everything okay? Something you want to share, right? There's that strategy of noticing the behavior. And then people go right to, oh my God, if they say this, I don't know what I'd do. I'm not a professional. You just got to listen. Tell me more. Just sit there and listen. That one phrase was taught to me by Sajal Bellin, and she just sit there and say, tell me more. And you'll be surprised what starts to come out. And then you've done a whole conversation. You don't really have to say much. And it's really nice because they feel heard. And then you connect them. You don't have to do anything. You can connect them to the right resources, to the right supports. And that connection part, sometimes we just dump on the other person. Oh, here's a brochure. Well, if I had a broken leg, would you tell me to walk down the road, make a right, the hospital's right there? Right? We do that a lot. Here's the brochure, here's the number. Or do we call the ambulance and we take you to the hospital? Do I drive you to the hospital? Right? It's that connection piece. So notice, listen, and connect. Now, I want to talk about the connection piece because Beyond the Blue has allowed for various options to connect, and because we know how hard that can be. And that's such a first great step. I often get colleagues calling, end of shift, 9, 10 at night, all hours. I've noticed my colleague just was in the change room crying. I don't feel safe, them walking away. Can you connect with them? No problem. No problem. I've had, supervisors call me. I don't know what to do. I know to call you, and I'm nervous. Over the next couple of days, can you connect? Absolutely. If you yourself feel like you're in a position and you want to connect, on a lot of our chapter websites, there's different ways of connecting. You can send an email. You can call. You can fill out a form. You can text chat. And, that multi-pronged approach is so important because we want everyone to feel comfortable, right? So whichever way you want to do it, fine, just do it, and it's that really first important step. Chris, I just wanted to ask you, do you remember when you took that first step and some of the feelings you felt around that? Am I right in saying that taking that first step can be difficult?
Yeah. I can remember that day very well. It was probably the most terrifying day in my life, admitting that I was vulnerable and needed help. And I mean, even right now, just thinking back to it, it brings up all the emotions again, and that's 2 years ago, and I was kind of prepared for this conversation today, but it still was difficult. I mean, for me, I was driving home from work and I was talking to someone from the association, and halfway through the conversation, I was just like, I'm having trouble keeping my shit together right now. And he listened and connected. Put me in touch with someone. Pete can probably help more with the name of the person he put me in touch with, because I can't remember. But he phoned me back while I was on the way home, and it was like, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this. You're not going to go back into work. You're going to call in. You're going to tell them you're off. I'm going to look into getting a psychologist, doctor organised for you. And it all just cascaded from there. And it was just that one step. And from that one step, it was just like that. I guess before then, everything was like building up behind the dam. And this was just the moment that the dam burst and everything started flowing. And I know the dam burst sounds like a catastrophe, but it was more of a relief. And then,
yeah. And then did you feel that swarm of support? You know, often we're so alone in our darkness when we don't ask for help. Did you feel that? I love that analogy where you felt that relief, that pressure almost, you know, releasing, and then, you know, you being circled with support. Did you feel that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that I don't remember having a conversation with you when I came home that night, but I know we did. I don't remember any of it, but I mean, yeah, that your first support, and then the other parts of the support started coming in, and I think at that stage for me the support grew gradually. It wasn't like it is now. I can remember one of the first sessions with my my doctor when I was saying, I don't know if you've heard of this organisation Beyond the Blue. And she was like, yes, I may have done.
Right. Well, she's a great supporter for sure. So Dorann, you know what, this would be a good segue, because how important is it? You know, Chris can't remember having that conversation, but certainly I don't think you'd be in any shock to know that something was wrong. Certainly, I think you probably feel tension and things not being right at home. And in this process, you know, how important is it for a family or support person to be involved in this process from the start?
I think it's critical, actually. I knew something was wrong for many years before it actually came to light. They got help, but this had been going on for a long time. And I think it's really, it's critically important to get the family member involved. I mean, we don't have children, but if we did have children, I also think it's really important that they get help, that they get therapy. It's as well as the spouse or the partner. But for me to be involved from the beginning was, if Chris had hidden it from me, it would have. I dread to think where that would have ended up. It's just that just being there, being able to let him know that he can talk to me, that he can say anything to me, and that I'm not going to leave him. I'm not going to walk away. I'm here to support him. He needed to hear that, and it's
that was another frightening.
Yeah. It's just the whole just being involved from the beginning and learn and realizing that while Chris is getting his support, it took me a while to realize that I needed to get support as well, and that took a while because I wanted to be strong for him. And if I felt that if I was then reaching out to try and get help from me, that in my head that was telling me, well, Dorann, if you need help, you're not strong enough to look after him. You shouldn't need help. You should be able to look after him. And if I was needing help, then I felt that I was crumbling and that I couldn't be his support. When now I've gone into therapy and had lots of therapy, I realized that what you actually need is you need help. Your self-care is so important as well, not just for you, but to be able to give that support as well. So yeah.
No, that's a great share, and that's exactly it. And even the psych and even the psychoeducation part of it, right? In terms of just really learning what PTSD is all about, you know, really just kind of that way when Chris is talking, you're getting it too. You're understanding it because you're learning it. And that's so important. You know, whenever there's a physical, I always do physical analogies, cancer, diabetes, you know, as a support person, we learn everything. We Google it. We're now experts. We sit there and we ask the doctor all kinds of questions, right? And we need to do the same when it comes to mental health diagnosis.
Absolutely. The books are there. The books are there. My therapist gave me book after book after book to read, and I made sure that I read them before I had my next session with her. And because I didn't understand, I didn't understand PT. I mean, I'd heard about it, but didn't really know what it was. So it is really important to make yourself knowledgeable, because then you understand the behaviors that are coming out as well. So that kind of starts, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, and it starts putting things together. The more knowledge is power, and the more knowledge that you have, the more you can help your partner, and the more that you can help yourself, and that you can start on that healing journey.
Yeah. And then you realize it's not Chris, it's PTSD. And so together you're kind of fighting that, you're not fighting each other, right? So that's really. So I want to
can I jump in for a quick second? So just two very quick points. First of all, I want to commend Chris and Dorann for your courage, because it does take courage to do this. So I commend you both. Those of us that are in the peer support world, the psychologist, the therapist world, will know and understand this analogy, and I've heard it a million times. But to your point, Dorann, of I don't need to go get help. I need to be here for Chris and be the strong one. The analogy that is used time and time again is the airplane analogy, that, you know, if something happens in an airplane, God forbid, the masks come down, mom needs to put the mask on herself first before it goes on child. That's the hardest thing that we have to do, or that a mom or a dad or anyone has to do, is because you feel that I'm being selfish. No, this isn't about me. Let's save the child. Where in reality, you need that mask first. You need to get that breath going. Once you've taken that breath, now we move it to the child. So
that's a great analogy. Yeah, great analogy. So I want to talk a little bit about when you do reach out to Beyond the Blue in whichever way you do. What do you expect? Well, you're going to get a call or an email back. And there's going to be an intake kind of process. It's a tell me more. And Beyond the Blue really takes a case management approach. You know, it's so important to do that, because when someone's in crisis, the only thing they need to do is ask for help. You know, then there should be people around who are assisting them in getting them what they need. And so you'll certainly appreciate that. That's the approach Beyond the Blue takes. So if Chris comes forward, and we start to learn more, then the suggestion is around, okay, let's get Dorann involved. You know, do you have someone? Yes, her name's Dorann. Okay, let's get her involved, and here are the reasons why. Do you think you're going to need time off work? Is this or do you want to start your journey, while being at work? What's happening there? Okay, let's get Pete Grande involved. He's the association person who's going to help you with that part of it. And are you seeing a therapist? No. Okay. I've got a short list of vetted therapists who understand first responder culture, and I'm going to send you start doing this. So it's really a piece around, we're going to check in with you, support you, and guide you every step of the way, because this process can be overwhelming. And because we know it, we've been through it, we want to chunk it for you and, make it as accessible and easy as possible, because you did the most important part, reach out for help, right? And so we are there to then move you forward in your journey. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of outline the intake process that Beyond the Blue does when you do reach out for help. It's more about fact finding and then personalizing the supports that you need. It's all about that. It's not, just here, go find this. It's really about, what do you need? Do you have children? Okay, do they need help? What are their ages? It's all about customizing that piece. And so when I do reach out to Pete, usually he denies my calls. Pete, do you deny my call, or you always pick him up? No, you never denied my call. He might roll his eyes, but he always picks up. Thank God we never FaceTime.
Yeah.
So Pete, everyone's journey is different, and everyone's comfort level is different. Can you walk them through some of the options, IOD pieces, WSIB pieces, form filling, can they still work and put in an IOD and see a therapist at the same time? What if they need to take off? Briefly, can you walk us through a few scenarios that you might give a member, an overview on those next steps?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So you alluded to this, no two members, no two situations, no two injuries are alike. Two members side by side hurt their legs or their leg. One may have to take several weeks off. One may have to take a day off. So there's no difference with the mental health injury. After my conversation with the member, we usually see where they are in their injury, and if the unfortunate thing is that most of the members that I deal with, Del, and I know you do as well, are at that point where that injury is so far gone that they do need the time off. And it's so far gone because it's the acceptance. It's that, and I'm going to say shame because that was me. That shame of, I'm a cop. I can do this. And you go on, your days turn into weeks, turn into months, turn into years, to the point where you realize that you can't do this on your own. So at that point, the member takes the biggest leap, and that biggest leap is picking up the phone, whether it be to the association, to TBTB or Canada Beyond the Blue, or to a therapist themselves. But that first phone call is so hard. So when a member does present with an injury, normally I'll tell them, depending on where the injury is, to take at least a week off. Let's find out how much time you have in your sick bank. And if it's a matter of having hundreds of hours or thousands of hours, then that's a little more of a breathing room from a process standpoint of, okay, I've got time in my bank, I'm going to get paid. I don't have to worry about that, because that is a stressor. Obviously, it's a stressor. Once that member's off, we will, it's reciprocal. TBTB will call me, yet I will call TBTB as well and get them involved right from the beginning with the member's permission, obviously, always with the member's permission. After the member is off and they've taken that breath, we'll get them connected with a psychologist. 9 times out of 10, it is a psychologist. And I'll tell you why. Many of our members will go out on their own and they will connect with a therapist. WSIB will only acknowledge a diagnosis, a PTSD diagnosis from a psychologist or a psychiatrist. With any luck, the therapist that the member reaches out to will have an affiliation with a psychologist who could at the very least do the intake assessment and the assessment for a diagnosis. And then the therapist will continue on with the therapy. Once that's taken care of, then we start the paperwork process. And the first step in that paperwork process from an internal standpoint, as far as the Toronto Police Service is concerned, and I know this is going out across Canada to all your chapters, so I would invite anyone who is non-TPS who's watching this to reach out to their associations or their Beyond the Blue chapters to find out what the difference is in process with their organizations. But from a TPS standpoint, an injured on duty report has to be filled out. That causes great angst with our members, because their thought is, now everybody's going to know. Now I have to put it on paper. Stuff just got real. And my response to that is, yeah, and if you fell and you broke your leg, we'd be putting an IOD in. The mental health injury is no different than the physical injury. And it's funny, I was just having this conversation with a colleague yesterday. We may not see it, Chris and I may not see it in our careers. We may not see it in our lifetimes, but the day will come where it will be as normal to talk about and submit paperwork for mental health injury as it is for a physical injury. It's right out of OPC, right out of Toronto Police College. Some of us are older. We went to BIC way back when it was just horse and buggy. It's hammered into you. You get hurt, you put an IOD in. You get hurt, you put an IOD in. But it was never told that it may be a mental health injury. So the IOD goes in. That IOD, what it does behind the scenes, it triggers a process. That IOD will go to medical advisory services at 40 College Street. Some fantastic people working in there, helping our people. They will take that document and they will start the WSIB process. And that's, I don't know, Del, do you want me to go into the paperwork now for that portion? I've been going on for a bit here. I can revisit it if you want, or
no. You know what? I think that's a good start. I think it's important for people to see that, you know, one, the biggest part is that you get in touch with someone who will inevitably direct you to an association person who understands the process and will walk you through it. And it's not as daunting as you think, but what gets overwhelming is when you try and do it on your own and then have to redo it because you've done it wrong. You know, we have members that go and well, it's not WSIB approved, or it's a therapist who can't give you a diagnosis, and you just, you know, listen, it's a lot of hard work and emotional draining work when you go and see your therapist. Now, to do it all over again for the sake of process, that is unbelievable. So do it right and do it right the first time. And certainly, Pete, I think what you did was give a really good first few steps overview on what that looks like. And it really is taking one little step at a time and knowing each step of the way you have someone that you can call and fact check or double check with. You know, when in doubt, definitely call your association, you know. Leah and Daniel, can you guys give us an overview on therapy styles? Because there are different styles. And that is part of the interviewing process, which I'm going to touch into a little bit later. Someone is diagnosed with, let's say, first responder. Okay, so first responder, chances are you've got, you know, a few PTSD, anxiety, you know, there's a few things around trauma. What kind of therapy would they look for? What are the different styles? Can you just give us a brief overview on that, please?
Absolutely. So there are different therapies that have been developed specific for post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay. So I think that it's important first to find a provider, you know, that has experience in working with individuals who have experienced a trauma. And as you mentioned, I think earlier as well, who are experienced and well-versed in working with first responders and first responder culture as well. Okay. And then I think it's important that that person is able to share with you, you know, the modality or the method that they use, you know, the pros and cons of it, why it works, and let you know that there is alternatives. Maybe they don't provide that, so you're making a fully informed decision. The National Center for PTSD has a great website, and there's a sort of a 1-minute clip or video that explains some of the main forms of therapy for PTSD. So one that is there is cognitive processing therapy. So this really helps you to learn the skills and understand the ways that a trauma can affect the way we think. When there's a traumatic event, it can affect the way we think about ourselves. Maybe there's thoughts that I'm a bad person or I'm weak. It can affect the ways you think about people. I can't trust people. Or it could affect the way you think about the world. The world is a dangerous place. Maybe those beliefs were already there, that the traumatic event strengthened those beliefs. So it's learning to recognize those thoughts and the way they're connected to distressing emotions, and developing more helpful thoughts or helpful beliefs. So it's not just about, oh, think positive, that, you know, if it was only that easy, but you know, are these thoughts helpful? What's a more helpful way of thinking? And then you get to decide, right?
Thank you. Yeah, Daniel, do you have anything to add to that?
Thank you so much, Del. That was great. Leah, there are a lot of resources, and certainly just to build on what Leah was mentioning, I believe that you have to really understand the client, the individual, the police officer in this case, and customize the therapeutic approach and process with them. So I think it's important that we don't use a cookie cutter approach. It's not one size fits all. Everyone's unique. Everyone has their own, what they bring to the table. And I think it's important for us to bear that in mind, because there's a lot of people who are just rote about it, and they just want to simply, fit someone in a straitjacket, and it doesn't work that way. Specifically in my own experience, dealing with trauma, there's so many modalities, as I know, Dr. Lee, you'd share, but one of the main areas I use is trauma-focused CBT. That seems to be very effective. Again, challenging the thoughts, helping them to change those thoughts, to move from the negative thoughts and dealing with the whole trauma-induced, feelings and emotions. So challenging that thinking is important, and changing that thinking. Another area that I use is exposure therapy, which is really effective as well. And yeah, right up your alley, you know what I'm talking about. That's really good, and that helps someone to actually face the fear, confront. Someone has said you cannot change what you refuse to confront, and there's a right way to do it. There's a right approach, right? So we do it in a way that we ease the individual into that, so they don't get overwhelmed, because of course you certainly don't want to re-traumatize. And I heard you, Chris, when you were saying that just even talking about this, you have some emotions being evoked and all that. So you see, these feelings are real, and it can carry with someone over a period of time. You learn to live with it, you learn to deal with it, cope with it better, but it's somewhat still there. But as you continue to grow, and that whole PTG we talked about, post-traumatic growth, then you're able to better, manage it, and not allow it to cause you to become dysfunctional or impaired in any way. And then finally, one last approach, there's many other approaches, but this other one seems to work, and I'm continuing to develop my experience and skill set in this, is EMDR, the eye movement desensitization pre-processing, very, very effective for therapy, and it's a natural way. So it's found by many people who opt for this therapy or modality to be very effective. So that's a big picture in a nutshell there, right there.
Thank you both very much. Oh, Pete,
sorry, I know once we're done recording here, you're going to call me and go, you need to stop interrupting. You need to, but I have to interject for 1 second. For those people who are watching who are not police officers, and I need to bring something to the forefront here, is that PTSD, anxiety, depression, is not just a police officer injury. Embarrassingly enough, it wasn't until I became a director here to see how many of our communications operators are injured. And it makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense why they would. Our special constables. And I mentioned the three, the police officers, the communications operators, special constables, because the three groups fall under the presumptive PTSD legislation with WSIB. But that does not discount the fact, and I've worked with them, that our civilians at our garages, the tow truck drivers, truck drivers who are constantly picking up vehicles that have been involved with crimes. Our parking enforcement officers, I've dealt with 2 or 3 over the last little while, who, because of their duties, had a diagnosis. So I just wanted to bring that to light for anybody who's watching this, and if they think to themselves,
and I love that.
Sorry.
That's why we let you interject, Pete, because you usually have something valuable to say. And that's the power of Beyond the Blue, that in the East, for us, it's members, not officers and civilian members.
Exactly.
We cannot possibly imagine being, a dispatcher and taking that call. I can't imagine that. And so we appreciate and honor all members. And so thank you for bringing that up, Pete.
I just wanted to add one thing to Pete's point as well, because so many of these members, one of the unique aspects is that the traumatic event happened at work or happened at the workplace, where they need to go back to that parking garage, they need to go back to the dispatch center to get those phone calls, the exposure piece, right? So not just the way of thinking, but one of the things that maintains the symptoms. And as part of the human condition, we want to avoid memories that are distressing. We want to avoid uncomfortable feelings. We want to avoid places or peoples or sounds or smells that bring up that traumatic memory. So also that exposure as well, not only to reminders of the trauma, but the unique element could be the workplace can be one of that, right? So in doing that work to set someone up successfully to gradually go back to work, that's a part of the work as well.
Yeah, that transition piece is really big. So Leah and Daniel, thank you for outlining so many different possibilities, right, in your treatment. And that's why it's so important. I always say book your 15-minute phone consult with therapists. And most people go, what? You can do that? I'm like, not only can you, you must. It's a must. We spend often so much time looking at everything else, price comparing, shopping, labels. I end up buying the Nutella anyways, it doesn't matter. But we spend so much time in those things.
Jar in the
Costco size.
None of this small thing, no.
And I can't emphasize how important it is, because, you want to get the right fit. And if you go to any of our Beyond the Blue Chapter websites, there's a tab called the Right Fit Guide. And we tell you, we kind of outline questions to ask the therapist. You want to get a feel for their personality, their energy. Do they, is their language too scientific? Does it turn you off? Do they listen? What kind of style do they practice? And some very technical questions. Are they versed in first responder? Do they fill out WSIB forms? There are all these questions that I think are important in asking. Then we also have the post-reflection questions. So after you hang up, these are some questions to consider. And, like I say, when you reach out to Beyond the Blue, we send you an email. We kind of do a short list of the therapists and also the email. Here, copy and paste this out, and then, schedule the phone call. But it's so important that you do, because finding that right person is going to be worth its weight in gold. I've often said, I feel like my therapist has saved my life many times over, but it's because she gets me and we connect. And there's this right balance. It's incredibly important. It's so important.
It's super
Leah,
important.
Yeah, Leah, Daniel, anything to add to that?
Yeah, the fit's really important, and absolutely, if someone will provide that 15 minutes, that's great. And knowing that fit can take time to develop, as well as in any relationship, feeling safe and not judged. Bearing in mind, a lot of people, they can make us feel good, can feel comfortable, so that's a big part of it. But also making sure, as we mentioned before, that person also has those qualifications. Because yes, you want to have a safe place where you feel good, but you want to make sure that you're walking away feeling that there's also progress and that moving forward as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that just kind of leads us to our next question, which is around, I think part of the hesitancy is, okay, so now I'm walking in here, am I lying on a couch? Like, what's happening here? What do we do?
No couch.
And
no
right.
couch.
There's no couch. So can you kind of demystify that? I feel like people are just so worried around this process. What can you expect? So you walk
You don't
in,
bite.
Right.
You don't bite.
Walk them through some of that, please.
I mean, you're going to be nervous. That's normal, right? That's human condition. There's an unknown. Who's this person? What are they going to be like? I think anticipating and accepting that, you're going to be nervous. And then I think a lot of people feel relief. Just even knowing they did something good for themselves can elevate. And then, hopefully having that connection with that person. So what to expect, whether you're walking into an office or now you're opening your laptop or your computer, it depends. It varies on the provider, but you know, them sort of demystifying the process as well in the beginning, that informed consent, you know, what happens with the information, what's private, what's not, what is their fee, what's the approach they use, what can you expect from them, and what are the expectations? How often, you know, do they recommend that you're going to be meeting? So a lot of the time it's at least once a week, right? There's 168 hours in a week, and only 1 hour of therapy is not a lot, right? And I guess wanting to see that the first couple sessions are them getting to know you as a person and you getting to know them, right? And then together working collaboratively on a plan that's meaningful and tailored to you.
Thank you for that. Yep, that sounds about right. Daniel, anything to add to that, please?
Yeah, just jumping in and building on that. It's very true. You know, ditto and fully concur. I think it's so important that, you know, when we had, you know, pre-pandemic, when we had the office open, so how I, you know, asked for the environment to be created was, of course, I have some nice relaxing music. So people are coming in because they're coming in with anticipation anxiety. Just coming to the therapist is increasing the anxiety because, as you said, Leah, you know, you don't know what to expect, right? So that's important. And then, you know, I have not that I'm trying to promote candy, but I have a nice little body, you know, would you like that? I just want them to relax. I just want them to, you know, feel comfortable, because the first impressions, right, as they say, right, make or break. And usually my philosophy is that, you know, how they say that it takes about 15, you know, if you meet someone for the first time, you know, your charm can last for 15 minutes. And after 15 minutes, it wears out. So I'm giving a little bit more time in a therapy context. So the first session, I think it's so important that, as emphasized and mentioned, that you've got to find ways to connect with the client, right? And if you're not gelling, if you're not sensing that, depending on the first session, if it doesn't go well, something is not right. Dr. Leah, come on, you can back me up on this. It is so important that you connect at the first session, because as they say, first impressions make that difference. I'm not saying that you'll know everything. You won't even know fully how to do the therapy map with them yet, but the first session is connection. So they feel comfortable establishing trust, and they're able to start, just unloading and unpacking it with you, and just, you feel great. And in fact, they start talking. Now, every client's different. Some may not want to talk. Some are very, like binary answers. Yes, no, sure. Yeah. And so it's for us as professionals, it's trying to get beyond the armor, right. To, and really probe deeper. So it is establishing good, healthy rapport and trust from the get-go. And I think that from there, that launches a successful therapy experience.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, both. And I just feel your positive energy and openness here. And I think that I know how hard it is that they come with armor, and extra armor being a police member of some sort. So, definitely I feel that if you kind of represent some therapists, then I think it's definitely a non-threatening piece. Now, I've had members after their therapy session book something. Okay, I got a phone call, got a meeting, got this, got that. Chris, thank you. Can Chris and Dorann, can you pipe in and just speak to the importance of self-care after the session? Because you are unpacking so much. What does self-care, so Chris, I'm going to ask you, Chris and Dorann both are doing therapy, so which is great. What do you do for self-care after the session, but also to communicate that to your partner? Today's therapy day, or just so you know, this is my calendar, it's therapy. Can we talk a little bit about that, both of you?
Yeah, I know one of the things that used to happen with us was I'd come home from my therapy session. It was downtown or up on the 401. So I had like a half-hour drive to get back and decompress a little bit. But often the first question when I got through the door was, how did it go? And that's the last thing I want to talk about right now, because I've just spent an hour going over whatever dredging all these horrible memories up, walking out feeling like crap sometimes, and coming home and wondering if it's going to, am I supposed to tell you everything about it? And we learned pretty quickly that sometimes it was like, it was a good session, but I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to give you any details. It's not that there was anything I'm trying to hide. It's just that this isn't the right place to go over it again. I'm still analyzing, inwardly digesting what it is we talked about, what we addressed, now I feel about it. And I know when I first started it and it was getting scheduled, it was like, yeah, you don't want to book anything after that. And I started off saying, well, why not? It's only an hour. I'm good. I can go out and do stuff. And I think a couple of times we tried it and it was just like, it didn't work at all. It's just, I don't think you can anticipate what's going to come up in every session. And you can't anticipate what the reactions are going to be to that and how you're going to feel when you come out of it. So yeah, I just found that sometimes I needed to come home and sit on my own. Sometimes I wanted to come home, put the TV on and just veg.
Yeah, I think you either switch off or, like, I know with my sessions that I've had, because then you've got, sometimes you go in with, this is what we're going to discuss. Like sometimes with my therapist, they would be like, okay, then next week, this is what we'll talk about this next week because we didn't have enough time to get in today or whatever, right? So you'd come out that session and sometimes I would be like, it can be, it's overwhelming, right? Especially at the beginning. And then, but your brain doesn't switch off. So you might have finished that session, but your brain hasn't switched off. So you might be going over things that you've said or thinking, oh, I wish I'd said that, or, you know, or maybe I didn't come across very well, or I really wanted to say this, but my brain just doesn't switch off straight away. So I have to, the whole self-care afterwards, you have to learn very quickly. What are you going to do to look after yourself? You absolutely don't book anything after it, you know, whether you go for a walk or go for a coffee or, you know, just sit and read or just sit with a light out for half an hour, whatever. You will find what works for you, you know, after every session that you have. But it's really important to find that out early on.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And, you know, Chris mentioned something. Dorann was being well-intentioned and supportive, right? And almost when you go to therapy yourself, you realize why Chris says, I can't do this right now, right? Yeah. You get it. And Chris, you know, I'm not trying to hide anything. Of course, I want to share with you. And, you know, sometimes both parties are coming with good intentions and it's just being met in the very, you know, in a wrong way.
And also as well, you need to realize, don't be offended. I was really offended at the beginning that Chris wouldn't open up to me. And I'm like, I'm here supporting you and you can't even bother to tell me what you were talking about in your session. How rude, right? But, and that really irritated me. But then when he sat down and he said to me, it's not that I don't want to tell you, Dorann, but this is what I've gone through. Or he's trying to tell me in his own words. So the one thing I would really say to anybody that watches this or whatever is, please don't be offended that your partner or your loved one's coming back and doesn't want to relay what was probably quite a traumatic hour for them and tell it twice or go into it twice. It's not that they don't want to tell you, or maybe they don't want to tell you some of it because it is very personal, but this is part of their journey and their recovery. And you just have to, there's some things that will happen in that journey that you don't like, but you know what, you've just got to suck it up because you want them to get better, you know. It's just don't be offended.
No, that's great.
If I may, I think it's very similar to when we get on as, again, I go back to the policing, but as a police officer, you're fresh, everything's new, you go to a party, they found out you're a cop, invariably the question comes up, hey, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? And in the beginning of your career, it's like, oh, wow, I went to this call and I went to that. Oh, you should have seen this. It was just, and then you get to a certain point in your career where you're asked that and you get to that point where you go, and I've done it. I really don't want to go back there in my mind. Thank you. And it's very similar to coming home, Dorann, to your point of, honey, I know you want to know, and please don't please don't, this is not disrespectful. I just went to a really bad place, to a really dark place this past hour. I don't want to go back there. I've hopefully dealt with that hour. Just let me veg. Chris, to your point, let me watch some TV. Give me a half hour and then we'll continue.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so, you know, of course, there's opportunity for post-traumatic growth. There's, you know, yes, there's a diagnosis, and where you are now is not where you are forever. Hopefully getting help and reaching out for help allows you to be on a journey of, you know, a new chapter, better coping, and a better standard of living. So with that being said, I'm going to ask you all if there's one takeaway that, you know, a member is watching and they're on the fence about getting help. They're not sure if they should, if they shouldn't, or there's something, there's someone else watching, notices a change in someone they love or a colleague. You know, these are the parameters. What is the one takeaway you want to leave them with? And at this point, whoever would like to start, I'm just going to say my piece is around the notice, listen, connect. And Beyond the Blue is going to, if you just connect them, we'll take it the rest of the way. You know, you don't know what to do, just connect them with Beyond the Blue. Oh, that rhymes. I didn't intend for that, but there you go. So that'll be my good luck for you guys now. Yours better rhyme as well. So, you know, jump in. What is the one takeaway you want someone to walk with?
I'm happy to go. No, you go, Pete.
No, please, go ahead. No, go ahead.
For me personally, it is you're not alone. Because for me, I felt I was alone. Okay, and then I found Toronto Beyond the Blue and the amazing support that I got from that, and it made me realize I am not alone. I can reach out anytime, anybody in Toronto Beyond the Blue, and I know that regardless of what time, day or night, that you're there at the end of that phone for me, and you have been. And so it's you're not alone. You might think you are, and the hardest thing is asking for help. The hardest thing is reaching out for help, but help is there. And there's a huge support network within Toronto Beyond the Blue, and you are not alone.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you. And that alone feeling can, oh, that is a horrible feeling. And you are absolutely not alone. It's just that first step in realizing that you aren't. Mm-hmm. Is it Pete?
Go ahead, Leah. You got something?
I was just going to say, absolutely. You're not alone, and there's help out there, and it's work. Right? It's not just going to go away on its own. There's not, one person or your psychologist can't, fix you, not that you're broken, right? There's not a pill that's just going to take it all away. There's not a magical fix. It's work, it's effort, and the grass is going to be greener wherever you water it, right? So yeah, it's hard work and it's effort, but it does work and it can get better, and there are help and there are resources.
Yeah, I love that. You have to put in the work. You have to. There's just not one magic cure. There's not one avenue, right? There's a whole wheel of care. And I love that, Leah. Thank you for that.
Padre? No, Padre, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I just want to say for sure, if anyone is feeling, like you have nowhere to turn, nowhere to go, feeling helpless, there is hope. Please get help. You are worth it. And this is the bottom line. You are worth it. And even if you may not feel like 100% you're worth it, and you're feeling 1% or 0.1%, you're still worth it. And
you are worth it. You're worth it, and you are loved. Absolutely. Chris, anything that you'd like to add on?
Yeah, and I'll try and keep it as brief as I can, because it's been going around in my head ever since you started this little bit, and it's probably going to roll on for a bit because that's what I tend to do. Yeah, so I think for a long time I just decided that burying all the trauma and the issues was the best way to go, and alcohol was the best way to do that. Mm-hmm. And then I stopped drinking after I'd reached a personal climax of a low there, and been using alcohol for a while. which meant that everything did come to the fore. Everything did come up and didn't get quelled by booze anymore. And then I ended up with a diagnosis. I ended up seeing the doctor on a regular basis. And the first question was, well, how many weeks do I have to do this for? When am I going to be better? When am I going to be back to PRU? When am I going to be back on the road? And it's taken a while for me to realize that I'm not Chris the policeman, I'm Chris the person who happens to be a cop. And PRU and running around with blue lights and a gun isn't the be all and end all. I'm never going to go back to PRU, and I'm a happier person for it, and I'm a better person for it. And our marriage has survived now, and it wouldn't have done if we had carried on. So I know one of the big problems for PCs going into getting help is that my job done? Is that my career over? And I think the important thing to realize is that you as a person are more important than your career. And if you don't look after yourself, your career is done, because you're going to go one way or another. So post-traumatic growth does happen. It is great. And it may not be the course that you had anticipated, but growth and survival and betterment are possible.
Chris,
With the right support and help and effort.
I don't know. No, this was needed to be said. I can't tell you and how thankful I am that you said this, because so many of the members wrap their identity up with being a police officer and put themselves as a person. They've lost themselves. And so, but what about your next chapter? What about retirement? What about your family? What about when you're not a police officer? And they cannot wrap their heads around it. Chris, what you said, I hope so many people take heed to. I am so glad that those are your lasting, takeaway words. They are so, so important. You nailed it. And I truly hope people understand that what they do for a living isn't who they are completely. And if they don't get help, then they can do neither. So thank you for that, Chris. Thank you both, Chris and Dorann, for your bravery. And it's funny because I get members coming up to me and say, what would they say? I'm being so weak. And I'm like, really? Do you find me weak? No, you're being vulnerable and so courageous. Well, that's interesting. And so are you. And Dorann and Chris, you two are one of the most brave, vulnerable, courageous, kind-hearted people that I have the privilege of knowing. And you are paying it forward through sharing your story. I always say you are unlocking someone else's emotional prison. You just are. Pete, I'm going to leave you with any lasting possible words.
And now I wish I would have gone before Chris and
I tried. You kept passing it.
That would have been the perfect time. Chris, my brother, I tip my hat to you, my friend. You have courage of a lion, right? And I'm proud to know you. I really am. And Dorann, you as well. Invariably I say this daily, not weekly, daily, because I deal with 3 or 4 members who are new to being injured, and that's on a daily basis. And the conversation always goes to, I can't come forward. What are they going to say? What are they going to think? So I try to tell our members that the stigma is still there, and it's still going to be there. We're working at it collectively as a community, be it a peer support community, therapists. We are collectively working at it. And as I said before, one day we will see that pendulum swinging to where it's okay to talk about it. But I always tell my members that they owe it to themselves, They owe it to their spouses, their partners, their children, their families, to leave this job as healthy as the day they came on. And that any mental health injury is exactly that. It is an injury. You are not less of a man. You are not less of a woman. You are not less of a person. If you come forward and say, I just need to take a knee here for a bit, not forever, just for a bit. I need to be taken off the sidelines just for a bit so I can heal. Give me that time to get my leg out of the cast and then put me back in the game, coach, if that is your destiny to get back in. But whether you're working for Toronto or another police service or another first responder service across Canada, you owe it to yourselves, you owe it to your families to heal before you leave.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Pete. And, I think Pete speaks to, no one would speak up. No one would come. And I know Pete starts his morning at 6 in the morning and ends his night at 6 in the morning. So it's nonstop. But you know what? In some way, it's great because that means people are reaching out and getting help. And the numbers are speaking for itself. I want to thank each of you personally for taking time, not just today, but in your everyday lives, in helping members. So, heartfelt thanks to all of you for being here. I know the message will reach people, and if we can help one person, one family member at a time, then that's ultimately our goal. That's ultimately our goal. So thank you all for being here.
Now, can you indulge me for 1 second? I'm sorry, and I would kick
No, interrupt again, Pete. Interrupt again. I was only doing a closing, but we're gonna.
I would kick myself and be remiss if you didn't mention this. This is not, the TPA is not Pete Grande when it comes to mental health. All the other directors do their parts, and my colleague, who I love to pieces, Tom Gabriel, who has a heart of gold.
That's the man.
Yes. Tommy has helped countless members. And I just love him to death. And thank you for allowing me to say that, because I'm not the face of the TPA. I'm not the face of the mental health portion of the TPA. Tommy is right there helping.
Yeah. And I think as associations, understand their role in servicing the members, which is I've always said, you're no longer just a bargaining unit. You've got to look at this other aspect of it. I'm hoping that all associations grow in this mandate or this directorship, because certainly the need is there. So thank you all.